This week around the NFL has been crazy, to say the least.
Inside, and a beauty! Hall running free! Brees Hall inside the 10! He's gonna score!
What's going on, guys? Welcome back to Talking Jets with Tigo. My name is Tigo, and welcome to episode 3 of the Talking Jets with Tigo podcast. A lot of really cool things happen around the NFL. A lot of not so cool things happened around the NFL when it comes to like scores and stats and things that as Jets fans we wanted to talk about. And then a lot of things happened in Jets Nation, and a lot of stuff to talk about, you know, the Bears game, the Minnesota Vikings game that's coming up, Mike White. But before we get into today's episode, before we get into today's conversation, before we get into anything about today, a couple of quick announcements. Guys, today's episode is brought to you in part by you guys, right? I have a Patreon page. If you guys want to become a member, a citizen of Tigo's Slavia, that is in the link in the description. It is less than a cup of coffee a month, and it really helps the channel grow. There's a lot of things that I want to do. Guys, if you aren't subscribed to the channel, please hit that subscribe button. We're doing a 2,000 subscriber giveaway. And if you want to become a part of that and you want to get your opportunity to get a jersey of your choice, go and hit the subscribe button and hit the notification bell to be notified when we go live to do the drawing. And then last but not least, guys, we now have Talking Just with Tigo merch in the description. If you want to go and have and get yourself some Talking Just with Tigo merch and support the channel in a different way, you can do that. But let's just hop right in to the podcast. And we got to talk about the around the NFL, right? And we always start with around the NFL before we take a deeper dive with the New York Jets. But there was a lot of really fun games this past week, right? This was a exceptional week of football when we look at matchups and possibilities and conference matchups and playoff implications and all of that. And I think the first one, which is a game that I was almost watching more intensely than the Jets game because of how close it was, and I wasn't expecting it to be close, has to be the Buffalo Bills versus the Detroit Lions. And man, for the Lions to lose by 3 points in the end really sucks, because you really hoped, or like, I don't want to say you believed, but you really hoped that they were going to be able to pull something out of there, you know? The Lions looked good. They made Josh Allen not look so good, you know. And when I say the Lions look good, I mean like for the Lions, right? I think that's a big key part of it. The Lions aren't a super great football team right now, but Amon-Ra St. Brown had himself a day, 9 catches for 122 yards and a touchdown. Holding Josh Allen and that high-flying offense in Buffalo to 28 points, only 2 touchdowns in the air, forcing an interception. Jamal Williams taking a big step in his snaps, obviously filling that hole that DeAndre Swift leaves because he's been dealing with an ailment all this time. And I was watching this game so intently, really rooting for the Detroit Lions, because that would have helped the New York Jets in a big way when it came to the AFC East standings, and it just didn't work out for us in the end. Fortunately, another game that I found super compelling was the Giants and at the Cowboys, just because I don't really care about the NFC East and what's happening there, but the more these games keep getting played, and now that we're starting to see the inner division games coming up in the NFC East, the Philadelphia Eagles, the Dallas Cowboys, and the New York Giants are all competing for a spot in the playoffs. And if the playoffs were to start right now, all 3 teams make it in. And that's awesome. And so the Giants dropping a game in division was really compelling and interesting for the NFC East story. But also, I like it when New York football does good. When the Giants are doing good and the Jets are doing good, I think everything is better. And so it sucked to see the G-men go down and lose to the Cowgirls, but that's what happens. And then another really interesting thing for me is this team that lost, which was the Titans, but them being able to hold the Cincinnati Bengals to 20 points and that high-flying offense. And I know that they didn't have Joe Mixon, but that didn't stop Samaje Perine from having himself a day, 17 carries for 58 yards and a touchdown. He also got 35 yards in the air, so he did a relatively good job of trying to fill the massive hole left by Joe Mixon. But even with them not having Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, Tyler Boyd, Hayden Hurst, all the guys that they have on that team that can get yardage and can score touchdowns weren't. Joe Burrow, 1 touchdown, and it wasn't like, it was just an overall good coverage day for them. They weren't getting sacks. They only got 1 sack in the day. They just made Joe Burrow miss. 22 of 37 for 270 yards. And they were just able to kind of keep up with it. And in the end, they just lost out because, in the fourth quarter, the defense was bending and trying not to break, just broke and let through the only other touchdown of the game for the Bengals, and boom, they lose by 4 points because of it, because they couldn't turn around and score their own touchdown. And also, the Cincinnati Bengals did an excellent job of, I don't want to say eliminating, but limiting Derrick Henry and what he could do on the ground. He really had to get involved in the passing game, which we know Tennessee struggles with. And a big part of that is Ryan Tannehill and his ability, and obviously the injuries that the Titans have on the offensive line. But that being said, Derrick Henry had more receiving yards than he had rushing yards, and I'd be curious to see how many times that's happened over his career in Tennessee. But that was just, I think it's interesting. It's a team that I am looking at, the Bengals and the Titans, that the Jets might match up against in the first round of the playoffs or the second round of the playoffs or wherever it is. And one of the things that I worried about is, how do you limit the Bengals offense and how do you limit that scoring? They've got so many weapons. And even though they were missing 2 of their big weapons, the Titans being able to hold them to 20 points only bodes well for the New York Jets. I think the New York Jets have the best defense in the NFL, and I think that we can limit what the Bengals can do. And I hope that if we get a rematch of the Bengals game in the playoffs, we can really show them what we can do with this new and improved New York Jets team from the first 3 weeks. There's 3 games left to talk about, and I'm going to talk about these 2 games in the same point because I'm going to make a same point about them. And the first one is the Panthers beating the Broncos, which is huge. Sam Darnold getting a win out there, and it wasn't like it was like a big game from Sam Darnold or that he did anything super impressive. 11 of 19, 164 yards. They won that game on the ground. They rushed the ball 46 times to the 19 times of throwing. Donta Foreman, 24 carries for 113 yards. Chuba Hubbard, 17 carries for 65 yards. They really just ground and pounded their way to a victory. And then you look at the Denver Broncos. The Denver Broncos are absolutely broken. I have no idea what's going on in Denver. I have no idea what's wrong in Denver. But the point that I'm going to make is going to have to wait for a second, because the other game that I'm going to piggyback with the Broncos-Panthers game is the Buccaneers-Browns game. The Browns playing their final game, assuming, right, that they move forward and really do start. With Deshaun Watson. This was the final Jacoby Brissett game, and the Cleveland Browns winning that game in overtime. Nick Chubb ran the ball 26 times for 116 yards. They were not able to stop him, and that Nick Chubb literally just kept them ahead of the chains. And that was it. They just won the game based purely on that, because Tom Brady and this offense couldn't get anything going. And the point that I'm gonna make here at this point is, this is 2 examples of guys who seemed to be or were excellent coordinators, because Hackett in Green Bay got Aaron Rodgers 2 back-to-back MVPs. He was his offensive coordinator there, and he gets this job in Denver. I'm assuming as a ploy to try to get Aaron Rodgers to go to Denver so that Denver can win another Super Bowl. And it ultimately doesn't work out. So they go out and get Russell Wilson, which has absolutely not worked. But this is an example of not every coordinator who's a good coordinator is a good head coach. And another great example of this is something that if any Bucs fan or any Bucs executive would have talked to anybody in a New York Jets jersey or in a Jets fan would have told you, Todd Bowles is one of the best defensive coordinators in the NFL, hands down. But the moment you promote him to NFL head coach, he becomes one of the worst head coaches in the NFL. It does not make sense what's going on in Tampa at any level. This defense should be playing much better than it is. This offense should be playing much better than it is. And the biggest concern that I have with Tampa has to be the offense, obviously, because how much control does Todd Bowles really have with the offense? It doesn't that's all Byron Leftwich, who should be up for head coaching jobs. But after what's happening this year and with that offense, it's a high-flying offense. Chris Godwin, Julio Jones, they've got Mike Evans. They've got weapons there. And it's just not clicking and something's not working. And that defense is stout. They've got players on that defense. And again, it's just not working, and I don't know why. And it's going to be interesting because there's going to be a lot of head coaching positions open this time around, and you're going to have to really think about and take into consideration what are these teams going to do. Is Tampa Bay going to be another one-and-done? Not another, but it seems like we're going to have 4 one-and-done head coachings in the NFL this year, if I had to take my guess. And those 4 one-and-dones are going to be McDaniels in Las Vegas, Hackett in Denver, Lovie Smith in Houston. And does Todd Bowles get a second shot at head coach with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers after there's a good to fair possibility they end below 500 with this team? It doesn't make sense. If I'm Tampa, I might move on from him. And I think you've got the next head coach in-house in Byron Leftwich, but who knows what's going to happen there. And then the last game around the NFL that I want to talk about is the Jacksonville Jaguars. Duval absolutely stunning the NFL world in the fourth quarter. Under 2 minutes, Trevor Lawrence marches down the field, gets the touchdown, and then they go for 2. He gets the 2-point conversion, beating the Ravens, not playing for overtime, playing for the win. Doug Peterson absolutely doing great things in Jacksonville, and he's turning that ship around slowly but surely. Jacksonville is starting to look like a competitive football team. Now, I'm not going to sit here and say that they're going to win a bunch of games or anything like that, because I don't think that they are. But this is a step in the right direction for Jacksonville. It's a step in where they should be going. They should be competitive in football games. And the thing is most of the year they've been in games. They just haven't been able to close them out. And this is a great step in being able to, when it's time to win the football game, when it's time to step on your opponent's throat, you do it and you close out a game. And then the best part of all of this is that it makes the Baltimore Ravens, a team that the New York Jets are competing with for a playoff spot, lose a game. Now in the AFC, there are 9 teams right now competing for 7 playoff spots. And we have our division leaders, right? Kansas City, Miami, Tennessee, and Baltimore. But if we look at the teams that are in the wild card hunt right now, the Buffalo Bills, the Cincinnati Bengals, the New York Jets, they all have 7 wins. And here's the great part. Tennessee and Baltimore also have 7 wins. The thing is, Tennessee is going to make it because no one in the AFC South can really catch them, in my opinion. I don't think the Indianapolis Colts are a good team. They just lost to another not good team in the Pittsburgh Steelers, in my approximation. I don't believe in them. But so Tennessee is going to make it. But when you look at the playoff picture, in the AFC East and the AFC North, they are really compelling. And seeing the Los Angeles Chargers beat the Cardinals was a little bit disappointing. I was rooting for the Cardinals to win that game because it's an NFC opponent, and I don't care if they get a win because it doesn't affect us, and it would be directly affecting an AFC opponent. The Los Angeles Chargers at 5-6 are a lot less scary than the Los Angeles Chargers at 6-5. But like I said, there are 9 teams competing for 7 spots in the AFC playoff picture, and the Jets are in the mix with all of them. Buffalo leads the wild card thing with 8 wins, but with 7 wins, obviously we have the Baltimore Ravens, the Cincinnati Bengals, the New York Jets, and then with 6 wins each, we have the New England Patriots and the Los Angeles Chargers. Now, I don't believe in the New England Patriots to keep this run of form going. I don't think they're a true playoff team with that roster that they have, but that being said, as of right now, there are 9 teams that I think are legitimately competing for the playoffs, and the Jets are in the mix. And now we go down this back stretch of games for the New York Jets. We've got 6 games left, and I think a realistic expectation for the next 6 games is 4-2. And I look at that and I say the New York Jets, in my opinion, should beat the Minnesota Vikings. If you want my opinions on why, hit the subscribe button. We're going to be talking about that all week this week. But the Buffalo Bills game seems like a revenge game for the Bills. Now, that's a game we can win with good quarterback play, which we saw from Mike White, obviously. But that seems like a game that the Bills are going to come back and really try to, get their revenge. But if the Bills continue playing like the Bills have been playing, which isn't so great, that's a game that the New York Jets can win. We should absolutely beat the Detroit Lions and the Jacksonville Jaguars. Our defense, I think, is going to be one of the better defenses that the Seattle Seahawks would have faced all year, and we should be able to stop that high-flying offense. And we've got our own high-flying offense, and then we end the season in Miami against the Dolphins. In a perfect world, I would like to go into the Miami Dolphins game atop of the division with no chance of us losing the division and saying, you know what, we've got the tie break against all of the AFC East guys. If we lose this game, it doesn't affect our playoff position at all, and we rest our guys. I would love to send in the backups against the Miami Dolphins just to say, you know what, we don't care at this point. But I look at these 6 games and I go 4-2 is a legitimate record that I can see from these 6 games. There's even the possibility of a 5-1 in there. And if the Jets were to go 3-3, they get 10 wins. I think that's enough to make the playoffs, in my opinion. But 4-2, I think, guarantees it. 5-1 puts us atop of the AFC East, and that would be absolutely fantastic. And that would give us a home playoff game, and that's what you want, obviously. And so there's a lot of stuff going, and there's a lot of stuff going on with the playoffs. But the great thing is that the New York Jets 100% control their future when it comes to their road to the playoffs. Now, in my post-game show that we do with the Buffalo Jet Fan and Jets Chaos, Buffalo brought up a point. At this point, is it playoff or bust? And is that now the expectation? And guys, the realistic expectation that I have for the Jets is 10 wins, not playoffs. And the reason I say that is because there is still a way that the New York Jets get 10 wins and we still don't make the playoffs. Now, the likelihood of that happening is very minuscule, but there are that many teams in the AFC that can still get to 10 or 11 wins, and they would have a differential or a tiebreak or a something that put them above the Jets. Now, I would be heartbroken if the New York Jets got 10 wins and missed the playoffs, but it is a possibility. So for me, my expectation is 10 wins. That's what I've adjusted my expectation. Not really, because I went into the season saying that the New York Jets this year should be able to get 10 or 11 wins, and I have been spot on. I have been almost batting 1,000. I'm not, right? I had us beating the Patriots once. But I had us doing, I'm pretty good on my prediction going on right now. I had the New York Jets ending 10-7, making the playoffs and losing in the wild card round to the number 2 seed, which for me was the Buffalo Bills. But now that conversation changes. There is a possibility of a divisional game, of an AFC championship game, because I think we match up against a lot of teams in the AFC exceptionally well. And the New York Jets play, you know what? Let's transition from around the NFL. We're leaving that. Let's go into, because we've been talking about New York Jets for a while, let's go into the Gotham Green Gazette news from Florham Park section. We're talking New York Jets football already, right? But I made a whole video about this, and I never uploaded it because of things, and its finals are going on with school, so I've been super busy, and I got the baby who's teething, and so he's really, really frustrated and needs a lot of attention, and it's all of this stuff. And my wife has been working an insane amount of hours, so the YouTube channel has been on the back burner just a little bit, because obviously school and my kid come first. But that being said, I made this video and I never uploaded it, talking about how the New York Jets, in my estimation, especially after we've benched Zach Wilson and now we've put Mike White in, and we'll talk about that in a second, the New York Jets should be considered a favorite to make it to the playoff, to not just make it to the playoffs, but in my estimation, they should be one of the teams that is seriously talked about going on a Super Bowl run. I'm being 100% serious here. I don't think I'm looking at my team with Gotham green colored glasses. I think I'm being dead serious here when I talk about this, because this defense, in my opinion, matches up against the playoff teams right now exceptionally well. And I mean exceptionally well. And so what do I mean by that, right? So the New York Jets have an absolutely high-flying offense, and when we look at the defenses in the AFC that we would match up against in the playoffs, right, there is only one team that I think's defense matches up against the New York Jets really, really well when healthy, and that's the Buffalo Bills, because I think they have an exceptionally good defense. Outside of the Bills, which are a team that we know we can beat because we've done it already, I don't see any of these defense being able to contain the likes of Garrett Wilson, who's absolutely blowing up and showing that he is a wide receiver one in this NFL. Elijah Moore, who's back to eating. This running back room that we have that's incredibly dynamic and has all of these running backs now. We're like 5 or 6 deep at the running back position, which is really, really good. Our tight ends, we're now feasting, and we don't turn over the ball. We're safe with the ball. And then let's talk about our defense and how our defense is made to match up against every single one of these teams, outside of one, in my opinion, in the playoffs. Let's say if we have to face up against the Kansas City Chiefs, we have, in my estimation, the best cornerback trio and duo in the NFL in Sauce Gardner and DJ Reed, and then extend that to the trio of Sauce Gardner, DJ Reed, and Michael Carter II. We match up exceptionally well against the Kansas City Chiefs, exceptionally well against the Miami Dolphins, exceptionally well against the Buffalo Bills, and exceptionally well against the Cincinnati Bengals, because we can limit the explosive plays on the outside by having 2 Pro Bowl level corners, an all-pro level corner, in my opinion, in Sauce Gardner, 2 excellent safeties, and a linebacker room that just seems to, thanks to CJ Mosley, know what your play call is before you do, and he is in the right spot at the right time, and he has his players in the right spot and at the right time. Now let's talk about the 2 teams I didn't mention when I said we don't match up against them super well, and that's the Titans and the Ravens. Now the Ravens, I think we match up against exceptionally well, because I'm not scared of a single wide receiver threat on the Ravens. We can put them on islands, essentially, and really focus on shutting down Lamar. And we saw what this defense can do against Lamar in week 1. If it wasn't for 2 boneheaded plays from our safeties at the time, who were playing as the worst safeties in the NFL, who have turned it around since then, I think we walk away with a win in Baltimore. And I really hope that we get that rematch, because I think we I think we blow the Ravens out of the water. The only team that I'm really concerned about our matchup is going to be the Tennessee Titans, and that's only because of Derrick Henry and how hard it is to bring him down. Derrick Henry does not go down easy, and even though we've got insanely good players at our linebacker and on our D-line, they are slimmer than you'd like when it comes to a matchup against Derrick Henry. Now, does that mean that I think we lose to the Titans? Absolutely not. And am I saying that the New York Jets will beat all of these guys? Absolutely not. And any given Sunday, any given team can win. But what I'm saying is that the New York Jets match up against all of these teams exceptionally well. I'm not scared of the Kansas City Chiefs. I'm not scared of the Miami Dolphins, the Tennessee Titans, the Baltimore Ravens, the Buffalo Bills, the Cincinnati Bengals, the Los Angeles Chargers. I don't see them as major threats to like our playoff run at all. And I really like the possibility and the matchups, I guess, is the best way to say that when it comes to the playoff picture. But now let's talk about the game that we just saw a little bit. And I want to spend some time talking about Mike White. And I'm going to go a little bit deeper about this in a video. But one of the things that I think we have to talk about is how much of the speculation of, is Mike White the guy? Is he not the guy? Is he whatever, right? How much of the speculation and the assumption of what we're seeing from Mike White is draft pedigree? We see guys like Michael Carter II, Brian Robinson, Bam Knight, and players at other positions, Braxton Berrios, at other positions that we totally value them based purely on what they put on the field, and we don't really look at the where they were drafted, right? We don't hold them up to that standard. We hold them up to the standard that they set with their play. And then we get Mike White, who plays exceptionally well for us last year, goes to the Hall of Fame because of the Cincinnati Bengals game, right? And has himself an absolutely fantastic outing, right? And then, so you see that. And then how much of what we're doing and what we're looking at with him is limiting his, what's the word I'm trying to find? Like, when we look at Zach Wilson, and we say, you know what? He's the second overall pick. We expect better, right? And I think we all did. But how much of that is saying, oh, Mike White can't be the guy because he's a fifth overall pick? And I'm just curious about it because Mike White, what has he done except be incredibly accurate? 22 of 28 passes. That is a 78.57% completion percentage, 315 yards, 3 touchdowns, a 149.3 quarterback rating, 1 sack because he didn't create his own pressure where he lost 7 yards. He averaged 11.25 yards per attempt. When he passed, he rushed 3 times to try to escape pressure and got 2 yards in that time. You know, he was incredibly efficient, and he got our offense playing at an incredibly efficient pace. And yet, there is a lot of Jets fans who look at that game from Mike White, and to be fair, I will admit, it is against the Chicago Bears, a bad football team. But Zach Wilson played a bad football team in New England, and he didn't look nearly anywhere near as good as Mike White did against a bad Chicago Bears team. And so, while I'm not totally out on Zach Wilson, I'm still a guy who believes that Zach Wilson can be a franchise quarterback, and I think that it was a great move opening up the quarterback position to a quarterback competition, and I'll talk about that more in my Mike White video moving forward. But is it time for New York Jets fans to adjust their perspective and take away that 5th round grade that Mike White had? I think so. Mike White has played exceptionally well, and he's earned the right to lose his job, in my opinion. He should play against the Minnesota Vikings, and that's another bad defense that he should be able to light up and do exceptionally good things against. And then we'll see what happens in Buffalo. Like, honestly, Mike White is playing an exceptionally good football, and I've said this in some other videos, and I'll say it again. This offense playing under Mike White is having a blast. They look like they're out there having fun, and that's a big deal because when your offense and your defense are having fun, they're going to be playing well, and when they're playing well, you win games. When you win games, you win playoff games, and playoff games lead to Super Bowls, and Super Bowls lead to parades, and that's what I want to be a part of, right? So Mike White, man, he's doing a great job, and it's really starting to change my perspective of what this team is going to be. If Mike White can keep this run, my expectations might have to change when it comes to what's going to happen in the quarterback competition next year, because I think Zach Wilson is obviously going to be there next year, and we're going to have to open up a quarterback competition. And I had originally had my eyes and my thought process set on guys like, Gardner Minshew, Tyler Heineke, guys like that who can come in and who can play games and can win games and have incredible moxie. And they've got the talent, and they're guys that our offense can rally around. But now, after seeing how this team rallied around Mike White, you have to seriously and legitimately put him in the conversation as a guy that the New York Jets look at and say, you know what? We're going to open up a quarterback competition between Zach Wilson and Mike White, and whoever wins the job, and we're not going to baby anyone. We're not going to hold anybody's hands. We're going to just say whoever's the best quarterback wins it, and in the end, you hope that Zach Wilson wins it just because of the potential and the talent that he does have. But if Mike White wins it and he keeps running this offense efficiently and on time, I'm not going to be upset, man. He has been incredibly accurate. And I think one of the biggest things, in my opinion, is in 4 career games that Mike White has played is a 68.8 completion percentage. And that's all I asked out of Zach. I said Zach should hit 65.5% completion percentage. If he does that, we'll win games. And Zach has been unable to do that, and we've been winning games in spite of him. But Mike White in his career is 2-2 with a 68.8% completion percentage and 1,268 yards in 4 games. He has 2 300-yard games with the New York Jets. Is it 2 or is it 3? I don't remember exactly, but he's got at least a couple of 300-yard games with the New York Jets. You got to have that. You got to ask that question, how much of what happened with Mike White last year was because we had a bad football team, and how much of what's happening this year is because we have a good football team. It's an interesting conversation to have, but Mike White doing Mike White things and being a player that we have to seriously and legitimately look at and have a conversation and say, you know what? We've got the guys to do it. Now, one last thing I wanted to talk about with the New York Jets is the tackle position. Obviously, we know that Max Mitchell is back. And he played back at his right tackle position where he should be, and everything felt right and everything felt safe, and I felt warm and cuddly on the inside. And on 24, I think, snaps, he allowed 0 pressures, which was absolutely fantastic. And Nate Herbig was back, and you loved to see it. Dwayne Brown and Laken Tomlinson are starting to gel together and play incredibly well. But we got to give credit to one player that I was totally not on board with bringing back when it comes to this upcoming year. But I think he's played himself into a position where I think we need to bring him back. And that's Connor McGovern, man. Connor McGovern had some incredible blocks against the Chicago Bears, and he continues to do his job. He's not doing it at an exceptional level, but that's not what we need from our center. We need our center to do his job. And Connor McGovern, game in and game out, week in, week out, every snap is just doing his job and doing it well. And it's a great thing to see, because while I would love for us to draft a center and find Connor McGovern's replacement, it doesn't have to be in a high rounds. We can pay Connor McGovern to stay on this team. Connor McGovern's not super old when you look at, he is 29. He's gonna be 30 next year, and we know that offensive linemen can play well into their 30s. Look at Dwayne Brown. He went to the Pro Bowl last year, and he's playing really well for the New York Jets at left tackle at 38, or is he 39 already? At 37, he's not that. He turns 38 next year at the beginning of the season. So, like, here's what I'm getting at. Going into this season, I felt we were good at offensive line. Then we lose Mekhi Becton. Then we lose George Fant. Then we lose Elijah Vera Tucker. And then I thought, oh, man, no matter what happens to the season, the New York Jets need to take an offensive lineman in the first round. But I keep getting proven wrong every step of the way because I think that we've got the guys that we need for our offensive line in-house. Dwayne Brown is going to be on the team next year no matter what. Unless he retires, which I don't think he's going to retire and give up $11 million. Dwayne Brown is on our team next year. So there's one offensive lineman. Whether you guys like it or not, the reality of the situation is Mekhi Becton's going to be on this offensive line, or he's going to be part of the tackle room next year. And he should be. He should be given an opportunity to compete because when Mekhi Becton is healthy and when he plays, he is one of the best tackles in football. Max Mitchell owns the right tackle spot right now. It is his spot. And we should bring back, because he played exceptionally well, and as a backup tackle, I would not be bad at it, Cedric Ogbehi should be brought back. And those are 4 tackles that you can bring in that we've already have on our roster that can seriously compete for the 4 starting tackle jobs. And in an ideal world, I'd love for Mekhi Becton to win the left tackle spot over Dwayne Brown. And then our backups be Dwayne Brown and Cedric Ogbehi backing up a Mekhi Becton and Max Mitchell offensive tackle room. And that would warm my heart to my core. But there's another guy that can play tackle that we haven't talked about, and that's Elijah Vera Tucker. Elijah Vera Tucker played both guard spots and both tackle spots. And if I'm Elijah Vera Tucker, and if I'm Elijah Vera Tucker's agent, I'm going to General Manager Joe Douglas and saying, I want an opportunity to compete for one of the tackle spots. And he should get it because he's earned the right to get it. Because obviously, if Elijah Vera Tucker can play at tackle, he has the possibility of making a lot more money in his career than if he plays guard. Now, I would like to keep Elijah Vera Tucker at guard because I think at guard he is an all-pro, Pro Bowl level guard, and at tackle I think he's just a really, really good, like probably a Pro Bowl tackle. But I think when we're looking at Elijah Vera Tucker at guard, we're talking about one of the best guards, if not the best guard in football. Perennial all-pro, perennial Pro Bowl, first ballot Hall of Famer by the end of his career if he's at guard. And then our offensive line going into next year in a perfect world would be Mekhi Becton at left tackle, Max Mitchell at right tackle, Elijah Vera Tucker and Laken Tomlinson at the guard position, Connor McGovern, and then your backups are going to be Dwayne Brown, who we know can start even at 38, Cedric Ogbehi, who started for us this year and played relatively well, Nate Herbig, who I even juggled with the idea of starting Nate Herbig at center because he's played that well for us and he deserves to be starting. But he would be backing up Connor McGovern, Nate Herbig. Nate Herbig would be backing up the center and both guard positions. And then in my estimation is you go draft a 4th-round guard. You go draft a Max Mitchell, but who can play guard to be a project guy, to sit behind Laken Tomlinson and Elijah Vera Tucker. And then after the second year of contract of Laken Tomlinson, you have an out. You get out from under Laken Tomlinson's contract. You move Elijah Vera Tucker back to the left guard. Boom, you bring in this new Max Mitchell type offensive guard to play at right guard, and then you run it back because, there's a lot of possibilities. And a position that I was incredibly worried about, I'm not worried about going into the draft. And I know that it's way too early to talk draft, and I'm not going to talk players or anything like that, even though I've secretly started evaluating players. The great thing is that the New York Jets aren't pigeonholed in the first round of the draft because we know we're not going to be picking high. We're going to be picking in the mid to late 20s. And with that pick, you don't really have a lot of control on the players that you can get. And the New York Jets can do what they should do. And that's whoever's the best evaluated player on their board, take him. Just take him. It doesn't matter what position he plays because fundamentally, we don't have a massive hole anywhere on the roster. Does that mean that I don't think that we should take a safety or a linebacker or an interior defensive lineman or an interior offensive lineman? Absolutely not. I think we should take all of those positions. But we're not pigeonholed into we need to take a linebacker. I'd love to bring C.J. Mosley back on a much cheaper contract, and Quincy Williams and Quan Alexander and Jamie and Sherwood. I think those guys are playing exceptionally well, and I would love to bring those guys back. And honestly, just run the linebacker room that we have this year, run it back. LaMarcus Joyner, I can't believe I'm saying this, played himself into another contract. I think that's the reality of the situation. And we do have Tony Adams, Will Parks, and Ashton Davis on the team, and they've played well. And so I feel more confident in my safety room. But I'd love to replace LaMarcus Joyner, but he's played well. Interior defensive lineman. I love what Sheldon Rankins is giving us. Do I think we could still deal with an upgrade in the interior of the defensive line? Absolutely. Do I think we could take another edge? Absolutely. We could take a million different things, but the great thing is that the New York Jets aren't pigeonholed at all anymore when it comes to the draft. Guys, we're going to end with the voicemails. We only have one voicemail, and it's from one of the great listeners, Harlan Abraham. He bought merch, and this was a voicemail that he left before the Chicago Bears game, and it was his opinions of Mike White and what he can do. But let's just listen to it. Let's talk about it, and we'll go over it.
Tigo, this is Abraham, Harlan Abraham, and I want to wish you and your family a happy Thanksgiving. I hope the Jets are making the right move by starting Mike White, although he threw 18 interceptions in 11 quarters last season. But let's hope for the best. Be well.
Awesome. Thank you, Harlan, for leaving the voicemail. One thing that I did want to correct there is he threw 8 interceptions in 11 quarters, obviously, last season. And while we do know, obviously, at this point that he won the Chicago Bears game and he should have won that game, he played exceptionally well against the Chicago Bears, 22 of 28 for 315 yards. I've said the stats multiple times. I think it is the right move when you look at the benching of Zach Wilson for Mike White, and I'm going to talk about this in a future video, but I'll mention it because you obviously left the voicemail. I think a great thing that we're going to see out of this is that it's either going to light the fire in Zach Wilson to fix his mechanics, get him out of the yips or whatever it is that's going on with him in his mental, and get him back on track to be the franchise quarterback that I believe that he can be, or it's going to show us that, Zach Wilson isn't the guy. Mike White ends up being a bridge quarterback, and we've got a roster with a Mike White-led team that can win us games, and whether or not we believe it, and I want to see a bigger sample size before I'm ready to commit to a Mike White football team, long term. But that being said, I've seen enough from Mike White to be able to say, you know what? He won us that Chicago Bears game. He won us the Cincinnati Bengals game. He's done good things for the New York Jets. He's 2-2. I mentioned it earlier. Now, over these next couple of games, we're not just evaluating, this team and their playoff hopes and all that stuff. We're evaluating Mike White and his possibility to be a guy that can really compete for that job, because this upcoming quarterback market is gonna be spicy. The Las Vegas Raiders have an out on Derek Carr's contract, and that's a quarterback that I think we can win a Super Bowl with this roster. Jimmy Garoppolo is going to squeak free, and while I'm terrified of his injury history, in this offensive scheme with a talent like this, he went to a Super Bowl. Now, they didn't win that Super Bowl, but you know what? He went to a Super Bowl. while I am terrified that the Jets would make the mistake of paying this guy, there's a good possibility that Lamar Jackson can squeak free. And while I'm not the biggest Lamar Jackson fan, I'm not going to sit here and deny that he wouldn't be an upgrade at the quarterback position in his what he brings with his legs. Now, that's not the move that I would make, but he does squeak free, you know. And we have other lesser named guys that deserve a shot at a start because they've done so well that are also going to hit free agency that we can look at to bring in if Zach isn't the guy and Mike White aren't the guy, you know? And I mentioned a couple of them, Taylor Heineke, Gardner Minshew. There are guys that are out there on rosters that deserve a shot and might be the guy for us, you know? And that's just the reality of the situation. Harlan, thank you for leaving the voicemail. Guys, if you want to be part of the Talking Jets with Tigo podcast, leave a voicemail. There's the number, 689-999-0430. Be a part of the show. I want to hear your opinions. I want to hear your thoughts. Let me know what you want me to talk about. But guys, we're going to end the podcast here. 45 minutes of Talking Jets with Tigo podcast. Absolutely phenomenal. Guys, let me know in the comment section what you think about any of the topics that we talked about, anything that you want to answer questions. And I might turn this end portion into not just voicemails, but also comments that you leave and answering your comments. We'll see what happens. But let me know. Hit the like button on your way out. Share this with all your friends. Guys, we're going to be doing a 2,000 subscriber giveaway, and I'd love if we could hit 2,000 subscribers before the end of the year, because that would mean my channel hit 2,000 subscribers in under 6 months, and that would be an absolutely awesome thing and an awesome accomplishment to be able to say that we did that. And I wouldn't have been able to do that without you guys, so I really, really appreciate all of the love and all of the support, the comments, the likes, everything that you guys leave. It really makes me want to come back and create more content for you guys. That's it from me, guys. Thanks for stopping by. Thanks for hanging out. And last but not least, go Jets.